Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, blockchain. This is the only video you'll need to watch on the topic to start understanding crypto even better than many who are already in. I'll briefly walk you through the entire history of money and how we ended up with cryptocurrency, explain in simple terms how blockchain works, what crypto actually is, and whether your computer can mine Bitcoin. Hit like, subscribe, and jump on board. Long ago, people didn't have money as we know it today, so trade happened directly, through barter. That's when you go to your neighbor and ask what he'd be willing to trade for his goat, only to spend hours arguing and realize he's not interested in your goods because, well, he's a stubborn little goat himself. Due to such mismatched interests, barter turned out to be a terribly inefficient way of trading. Over time, humanity moved toward using items that were rare, durable, and easy to carry. First came various shells, and later precious metals like gold and silver. Shiny, beautiful coins naturally ended up in people's pockets, making trade much easier. Gold and silver coins were used for centuries, but they came with their own problems. Carrying around a pile of metal, especially valuable metal, was no easy task. Heavy to move, easy to steal, and attracting way too much attention. That's how the first banks and paper money came about. People would leave their gold for safekeeping and receive paper receipts in return, which could be passed to others as proof of ownership. Trust in this money was based on a simple fact. Each paper note represented real gold in storage. After all, paper was much easier to carry. But as the economy grew more complex, world wars broke out and budgets were stretched thin, the strict gold backing became a problem. Governments wanted to spend more than they could afford, and gold limited that freedom. So in 1971, world currencies were decoupled from gold, and money became fiat, meaning it was backed by nothing but trust in the government. Since then, we've all been pretending that these pieces of paper have any real value. With technological progress, even more convenient ways to store and transfer money appeared. Digital money, bank cards, and electronic payments. Now we can safely say, we hardly see or feel the value of money anymore, since all that happens is numbers changing in a bank app. And worse, if those in power want to, they can easily block your payment or even freeze access to your hard-earned money without much effort at all. But it's precisely because of these limitations and endless financial crises that Bitcoin appeared in 2009. Real digital money with no bosses, central banks, or print more button. Instead of trusting banks and governments, it relies on code, mathematics, and decentralization. Most importantly, the number of coins is strictly limited. Transactions are transparent, and the system works without intermediaries. This is cryptocurrency, next-generation digital money built on blockchain technology. First, let me make this clear. Blockchain, cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin are not the same thing. We'll gradually break down all these terms, but for now, think of cryptocurrency as digital money in general, and Bitcoin as just one of the currencies out there. The best place to start is with blockchain itself. At its core, blockchain is a massive database where all transactions are recorded chronologically. Who sent, how much, to whom. This information is grouped into blocks. But a block also contains less obvious yet crucial elements like the block's hash. A hash is like a unique digital fingerprint. It's generated based on all the information inside the block. Even the tiniest change, like altering just one digit in a transaction, completely changes the hash. On top of that, each block contains not only its own hash, but also the hash of the previous block. This creates a system where new blocks are regularly formed, sealed, and added to the existing chain, the blockchain. That's why it's called a blockchain. Data is stored in blocks, and each one is securely linked to the previous, forming a strong chain. Because every block references the one before it, the entire chain becomes extremely reliable and resistant to tampering. If someone tries to change the data in even a single block, its hash changes, which invalidates all the following blocks. The network instantly spots this and rejects the fake. But what exactly is this network? Imagine blockchain as a record book of all transactions, but instead of sitting in a dusty drawer of some tired accountant, it's stored on millions of computers around the world at the same time. These computers are called nodes. Their job is to exchange information and constantly check that everyone has the exact same version of the blockchain. Most importantly, before a new block can be added, the network participants must agree that it's valid and not an attempt at fraud. This process is called consensus. Now, picture a group of friends keeping identical record books of all their transactions. When someone wants to make a transfer, they announce, I, John, send 10 coins to Mike. The others check their record books. Let's see. Does John actually have 10 coins? If everything checks out, they approve the transaction and write it down. But sooner or later, someone will try to cheat. I sent 100 coins to John, even though the trickster only has 5 coins. The others immediately catch the lie. Nope, you don't have that many coins. We're not writing this down. That's how consensus works. Everyone cross-checks the data and records only what's verified. Cheating won't work, because no one else will support it. Now comes a fair question. Why would anyone bother doing this at all? What's the point of maintaining the blockchain and checking other people's transactions? The answer is simple. It pays. Participants who support the network are rewarded with cryptocurrency, which they can then exchange for real money. The mechanism the network uses to reach this agreement is called a consensus algorithm. There are many of them, but the two most important are proof of work and proof of stake. Bitcoin runs on the proof of work algorithm, and the idea is simple. Solve a super hard math problem. The first person to solve it gets the right to add a new block to the blockchain and takes the reward in coins. That person is called a miner, and the whole process is called mining. At the heart of the problem is finding a special number called a nonce, which can only be used once. This number, combined with the block's data, creates a hash that starts with a bunch of zeros. Miners try different nonces until they find a hash that meets the network's current difficulty. Basically, how many zeros the hash should start with. The first practical implementation of proof of work in cryptocurrency was created by Satoshi Nakamoto, the mysterious inventor of Bitcoin. That name is just a pseudonym for an unknown developer who left the world a revolutionary technology and then went off the radar. If you're now looking at your beefed-up gaming rig and thinking, sweet, this thing's gonna make me rich, I hate to break it to you, no modern PC has nearly enough power to solve Bitcoin's math problems. Today, specialized devices called ASICs handle this work. They're designed solely for mining on a specific blockchain. On top of the hardware, you need a ton of electricity and serious investment. Back in the day, you could mine Bitcoin even with a low-end computer, but then network difficulty comes into play. It determines how many zeros must appear at the start of a hash. Difficulty is automatically adjusted to keep new blocks appearing at a steady pace, roughly 1 block every 10 minutes in Bitcoin. If too much computing power overwhelms the network, and blocks start appearing too fast, the network increases the difficulty. If miners leave, the difficulty drops. This self-regulating system keeps the network stable and secure. In addition, every 210,000 blocks, or roughly every 4 years, the reward for miners is cut in half. This is called the halving. This process is irreversible and, combined with the network difficulty, helps make Bitcoin an increasingly scarce resource. And of course, not all proof-of-work coins are this demanding. Some can still be mined on a regular personal computer. A notable example used to be Ethereum, the second most popular cryptocurrency, which switched to an alternative consensus algorithm, proof of stake, back in September 2022. Proof of stake is basically a more modern take on blockchain. Unlike proof of work, participants don't need to burn huge amounts of energy solving complex math problems just to earn rewards. In proof of stake, creating new blocks depends not on computing power, but on how many coins you lock up in the network. This is called staking. Those coins still belong to you, but while they're staked, you can't transfer or sell them. Think of it a bit like a fixed-term bank deposit. But unlike a bank deposit, staking doesn't have a fixed interest rate, and there are 2 ways to earn rewards. 1. Run your own validator node. Or 2. Join an existing node. Running your own validator node basically means setting up an online server that's connected to the blockchain and participates in creating and validating new blocks.
Approved!
I talked about it a bit earlier. So which is better, running your own node or trusting an existing one? The answer depends on your wallet. Running your own node is obviously the most profitable, but it requires serious investment, not just in the server, but also in the coins you plan to stake. For example, to run a node on Ethereum, you need to stake at least 32 ETH. That's over $100,000 at today's rate. And that's just the minimum. The more you stake, the higher your chances of earning rewards. To put it simply, with the minimum 32 ETH, you won't earn much, because bigger players holding millions or billions of dollars will grab most of the network's rewards. In the end, it's a bit like a lottery. The more coins you stake, the higher the probability that your node will be chosen to create the next block. That's why for most of us, it's much easier and more practical to join an existing node. You'll earn a bit less, but sleep way better. It's important to understand, the coins you stake don't go anywhere. They're frozen on the blockchain and only you have access to them. Validators themselves take on much bigger risks. If they break the rules or even make a mistake, they face slashing, a penalty that could cost them their entire stake. That's why validators follow all network rules strictly. They're financially motivated to act honestly, even more than you probably would because they've got so much money at stake. So, while proof of stake looks more modern and eco-friendly compared to proof of work, it also has its weaknesses. Due to high entry barriers and technical challenges, most validator nodes in any large network end up controlled by a relatively small number of participants. I'm sure by now you already get what cryptocurrency means. It's digital money that isn't issued by any government and isn't stored in a bank. Instead, it exists on the blockchain and uses cryptography to keep data secure. That's where the name comes from, cryptocurrency. The two main cryptocurrencies are Bitcoin and Ethereum, but which asset is actually better? Let's figure it out. First of all, what is their purpose? Bitcoin in the modern world plays the role of digital gold. Many businesses and even countries hold BTC as insurance in case of instability in the global economy. Ethereum is already an entire ecosystem. It is often called the new internet because everything is being built on its basis, from video games to an alternative banking system. The consensus algorithm we already discussed on Bitcoin, it is proof of work, and on Ethereum, it is proof of stake. Another key point is supply. Bitcoin has a strict limit, only 21 million BTC, and printing more is impossible by definition. On top of that, analysts estimate that 2 or 3 million coins are lost forever, which makes Bitcoin even more scarce. But Ethereum is the opposite case. Its emission is unlimited, and new coins can be issued in any amount if the developers decide so. Of course, this process is carefully controlled to keep inflation in check. Some coins are regularly burned, permanently removed from circulation. Still, the fact remains, Ethereum doesn't have a maximum cap, and that's a downside if you're looking at a long-term scarcity. The speed of operation of Bitcoin and Ethereum differs enormously. In Bitcoin, a new block appears approximately once every 10 minutes, and this directly affects the speed of transfers. A simple transaction from one wallet to another can take from 30 to 60 minutes. Ethereum is much faster. New blocks are added roughly every 12 seconds, so transfers usually settle within 1 to 5 minutes. And thanks to so-called Layer 2 solutions, that time can be cut down to just a few seconds. Fees are another story. On Bitcoin, a transaction usually costs $3 to $5. On Ethereum, fees vary depending on network activity. In quiet times, it's $1 to $5, but during high demand, they can spike 10x or more. Fortunately, the situation with this has become much better thanks to L2 solutions. Using them, the costs for fees are reduced to just a few cents. If you want to know more about it, check out the pop-up above. The final point is scalability, or how much room Bitcoin and Ethereum have to evolve. The architecture of Bitcoin is almost not subject to modifications. Of course, enthusiasts try to make improvements, but global changes are not to be expected. This is both a plus and a minus. On the one hand, it is stability and reliability. On the other, barely noticeable development. Ethereum, however, is not without problems, but it is being developed much more actively. Behind the project stands a team of developers, supported by a huge community. The network architecture is more flexible, and the very transition from proof of work to proof of stake speaks volumes. Perhaps, over time, Ethereum will even be able to overcome the inflation of its coin and become as scarce as Bitcoin. So, which one is better to invest in? That's a decision only you can make. I'm not giving financial advice here. I'm just sharing knowledge. Here comes a shocking fact. No cryptocurrency is actually stored on your phone or hard drive. All crypto exists only on the blockchain, whether you keep it on an exchange or in a wallet on a computer. The coins never leave the blockchain. A wallet you install isn't a storage place, but more like a key to your personal vault. After all, cryptocurrency and transactions are just entries in a huge record book called the blockchain. To better understand this, let's break down a few key terms. Crypto wallet. A program that stores your keys and provides easy access to the blockchain for monitoring, sending, and signing transactions. When you create a wallet, you get a unique public key and private key. Public key, like a bank card number that you can share with someone to receive funds. Private key, like a secret PIN that gives full control over the funds tied to it. The private key signs transactions and proves ownership of the assets linked to it. That's why it must be kept completely secret. To make storing and recovering your private key easier, there's the seed phrase. This is a set of 12 to 24 English words that encode your wallet's private keys. Lose the seed phrase and you lose access to your funds. Let someone else get it and your coins can be stolen. Always make a backup of your seed phrase and store it offline. The best way is to write it down on paper and keep it somewhere safe. Most importantly, never take a photo or store it on any internet-connected device. If anything is still unclear, don't hesitate to pause and drop your questions in the comments. The more questions, the more useful this video will be. Endless economic crises and ever-growing inflation have become the norm in recent decades, and no bank deposits can keep up with such relentless price growth. Just look at real estate as an example. A typical house in the USA in 2009 cost $172,500,000. It was roughly 35 million BTC at the time. By 2014, the price had risen to $283,000, but measured in Bitcoin, that was only 395 BTC. The real estate boom started in 2020. The same house cost $296,500,000, or about 26 BTC. By 2023, the price increased drastically to $390,000, which equaled roughly 13 BTC. Today, in 2025, the same property starts at $420,000, but in Bitcoin, the cost is about 4 BTC. It's scary to even imagine what will happen next. All this price growth is in dollars, while the drop in property prices in Bitcoin reflects massive inflation. Bitcoin didn't just rise on blind faith. Much of its growth comes from the weakness of fiat currencies. Money can be printed, but there are only 21 million Bitcoins, making it one of the rarest and most valuable assets in the face of never-ending inflation. Though some might think 21 million coins is a lot, large companies and even entire countries are already stepping in. Their goal is to accumulate Bitcoin for long-term holding, not for speculation. Strategy, for example, owns 632,000 BTC, about 3% of the total supply. And they have young competitors like Metaplanet, 21 Capital, and even Tesla, all planning to increase their Bitcoin reserves. That's not even counting giants like Google or Apple, who haven't joined the crypto race yet, but probably will soon. Many countries are already considering Bitcoin as a way to diversify their reserves. El Salvador, back in 2021, adopted BTC as an alternative currency and continues to top up its government funds with it. The US, in March 2025, created a strategic Bitcoin reserve. It's highly likely other world leaders will follow. The logic is simple. Copying one of the strongest economies is profitable. If the Bitcoin reserve strategy succeeds, a country won't fall behind. It might even gain an advantage. If the strategy fails, losses will be roughly the same for everyone. So even if it's not very visible yet, the battle for Bitcoin is already underway. History repeats itself. When gold stopped being money, those who bought it at the right time not only preserved their wealth, but multiplied it. Today we have a similar entry point, only instead of gold, it's Bitcoin. Most people don't realize this yet. That means we're still in the perfect moment to start. If you want to dive into crypto, check out this video. I'll show you how, with just a smartphone and a few spare minutes a day, you can start making some pretty decent money. Go through the whole path, from registering and funding an exchange to buying assets and getting your first income, right now, with me. Click on this video. I'll see you there, young sailor. The course for profit is already set.